Welcome, Facebook family and friends, followers, everyone that's out there in Facebook land. Today we have an amazing guest, my good friend, Pierre DeBar. He is coming to us from Chicago and the great outdoors up there in Chicago, which is, we'll learn more about why he's outdoors today and coming to us from that space. And Pierre might be having a little technical difficulty. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're good. We're good. So let me tell you about Pierre. If you don't know Pierre, if you have not met him or watched the video I shared of him earlier, Pierre is an amazing individual. He is a certified heart math trainer. He is a certified extreme mental performance coach. He is also a certified unstoppable mind coach. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Unbeatable mind.
Unbeatable mind. That's right. I knew I had a wrong word there. Okay. And he's worked with both organizations as well as athletes from the NHL, the NBA, the MLB, the MLS, and any other three-letter, not agency, but, sports organization.
NCAA. How about that?
There you go. NCAA. There you go. Okay. So Pierre's worked with professional athletes a lot, and we're going to talk about what he does with professional athletes. We're going to talk about his passion and why he does what he does. We're going to cover all that tonight. So we got a lot of ground to cover. And but I can tell you, Pierre is one of my favorite people. He is a legitimate, I'm going to throw this out there at the beginning, he is a legitimate tree hugger. He's the first legitimate tree hugger I've ever met. We'll talk about that too a little bit maybe as we go later in the show. So
sure,
he's an awesome guy. So Pierre, tell us a little bit about your background, about who you are, kind of where you come from, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Twin Cities, obviously epicenter right now of quite a bit of change and chaos and peace all at once. But, a great upbringing, youngest of four boys, a mom that was a nurse, a father that was a high school teacher. And just had a great upbringing. Very competitive family, always playing hockey and soccer and tennis and any other ball we could get our hands on. And, had a great upbringing and ended up at University of Wisconsin, for my undergrad. I actually did child and family studies there. I was the only guy in my major, but I found it a little bit different shift from psychology, just from the sense that it was more relationship based and family dynamics. And but I jumped right into sales out of university and did really well and ended up doing enterprise solution technology sales and did very well in the Chicagoland area. I actually was 8th employee and helped take it to about 115 employees in just a few years, and left as a number one salesman in my company and just walked in one day and said, you know what, I'm not into this anymore. I was reading books about self-help and not even self-help, just personal growth and really concepts about developing oneself. And that's where my mind always was. And I couldn't take it anymore. I just needed to pursue that path. That was 99. Ended up in massage therapy school of all places, and one of the top schools in the country. And when you take a chance on something and you follow your heart, the world supports that. It does. And, financially it was a big shift from what I was making. And, you pull a massage table out of a Lexus, it was a weird sort of dynamic. But what I found was that I immediately went through transformation, and that was 20 years ago. And I started transforming personally and emotionally and mentally. And I knew right away it was just an entry into the world. But I had this vision before I even went to massage school. I saw myself 20 years down the road. I remember it so clearly. I was at some energy medicine conference surrounded by physicists and MDs and healers and, on the frontier of what human energy is. And here I am 20 years later, involved in multiple, I actually have an energy medicine clinic. I'm working with people's energy systems, how that shows up in their physical, obviously their heart, which we'll talk about, how they direct their energy with their mind. And then, the other part, the intangible, that's the spirit that really is the real chemistry of the body. And that's kind of where I've taken it, that evolution from the body and got into hypnosis. Hypnotherapy turned into breath work and teaching all sorts of transformational breathing techniques that really help get people unstuck. And as you go through that, the next logical thing was really diving into how you direct that energy. And that's where the heart came in. And that's where really a lot of the mental techniques, extreme focus, unbeatable mind, which is a Navy SEAL training coaching program. So yeah, lots of things there, but here I am. And I'm following my passion and doing that and helping facilitate change in others.
It's awesome. You have such an amazing path. In fact, I don't think I knew that you were an enterprise solution salesman. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Oh, yeah.
pretty, that explains a lot of why we connect at one level.
Mm-hmm.
I've used those solutions for many years, so that's awesome.
Sure.
So you come from this very, I would say, logical background into this, what some might call woo-woo background, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
we know those people, but honestly, there's it's interesting. There's so much science now around the mind and the heart and the connectivity they have to how we perform as individuals. Is there anything in particular, like right off the bat here, that really stands out? As was there like an aha moment for you or an epiphany on this journey that accelerated your pace of making that transformation?
Well, I think I really believe I look at the milestone of sitting in my manager's office in the technology consulting company. And I was basically the guy carrying the flag, bridging the consultants with the sales force and the management. And I just remember sitting across. I walked in that day. I was not planning on leaving. And I just had a moment with him, and I was just telling him some of my frustrations about how what we were promising, we weren't delivering. And my integrity was taking a hit with my clientele because as a growing company, you're trying to build the company and grow, but then you're piecemealing certain people and positions on consulting gigs that maybe aren't really that qualified. And so some of that stuff was really causing a lot of conflict in that moment. And I just remember kind of going into the office, just speaking my mind. And he goes, "Wow, it doesn't sound, I mean, you sound like you don't want to work here anymore." And I'm like, he goes, "You want to make this your last day?" Kind of teasing. And I just sat there. I remember this long silence, and I go, yeah. You know what? I think I will. And he just sat there and stared at me. You couldn't even believe it. The management team heard. And I remember that afternoon, I was sitting in my apartment going, "Oh my gosh, what did I do? I just left this security, this money, this plan." But in my heart, deep in my heart, I knew, I'm like, this is my out. This is my opportunity. I have a chance to really follow my path. And not that I couldn't have done it that way. It just would have been different. I just knew inside I had to just blow things up and take a chance. And to leave something so secure and doing really well, I think that was a real epiphany of letting go. And sometimes letting go of something that listening to the heart and finding that balance between logic and your heart.
It's interesting you talk about that balance, because I think that's a really important thing. We live in a world that has been so focused on logic and intelligence, which is important, but we've kind of set the heart aside. We set that intuitive sense of, following intuition, following your gut, aside. And I think in that process we lose something. So it's interesting. And part of the title of tonight's show is about transforming the heart and the mind, right? And that's, you do that so well. So let's share with people a little bit about what it is you do now, kind of what you've been working on the last few years here. A lot of this work has been in the professional sports arena or the collegiate sports arena. So talk a little bit about that, so people get a perspective on where you are. You're not just doing massage therapy out of a Lexus anymore,
No. And that really ended up turning into like a clinical body work. And I did rehab and, very, very pain based. And when you work with the body long enough, you figure there's a lot more playing into the pain and distortion of body. And a lot of that's stress in the mind, stress in the heart, their emotions, and how that's showing up in the body. But, one question I love asking my classes and in presentations is, do you want to think alive or do you want to feel alive?
That's a pretty clear answer there. You want to feel alive.
Yeah, and then of course you got logical people that I want to think alive, and it's like, okay, I understand, yes, but we're in a very dominant society of thinking, and that what we found is, especially in the research with heart math, is that the biggest input into the brain is the heart rhythms, and what we're broadcasting into the field around us is really what's happening in our heart and what we're feeling, and not what we're thinking. So that's something we'll talk about. But the influence, I've been an athlete myself and being exposed, and once you start working with an MVP in a major sport like the NHL in a town like Chicago, and people get word of that, then all of a sudden everybody starts coming. Summertime, everybody's coming to you, and so you end up. It just happens. It just happens, and part of what made that work is that I honor sports psychologists. I honor that realm. I just know from where I was coming from the body centered and having this history of working with the body, that there's a lot of information that the body gives to the brain. That as much as we put this energy and emphasis on, you can look at any magazine rack, the mind, neuroplasticity, mindfulness, and everything's mind, mind, mind. Yet there's another pathway of communication happening from the body, and that's telling a whole nother story. And if we can get those two aligned, now we have a really powerful feeling behind our thinking, rather than those things being in distortion, which can, in a lot of people, feel like two different people. You got two different bodies conflicting. You're thinking one thing and feeling something different. You don't know how to resolve those things. But with athletics in particular, that's where we've been able to really have some fun, because listen, not everybody's going to show up and feel confident all the time. There's a lot of other things that play into stuff. And even if that day, and for many on this that might be in business, you might show up and feel confident going in there, yet something happened at home and you didn't sleep well for the last week. You got a health condition. There's other things playing into your emotional well-being, and that's causing distortion with what's happening in the brain. And we actually have a lot of influence in that emotional world, and that can really impact how our brain operates and where we can be at our best. And really, the game slows down, our decision making, our higher cognitive abilities really come online when our heart's in a coherent field, which is usually connected with positive, renewing emotions. And so those are the themes I've taken into athletics and said, hey, this isn't just about what we're thinking. This is also about what we're feeling, and how to use that and other sort of physical tools to get that communication network going for performance.
It's interesting. So, like you said, we're caught up in this world of the mind, the intellect, and we focus on that aspect. I know I focus on a lot on that as well. And I'm kind of come from the other perspective. It's like we're in the customer experience world a lot, right? And it's all about feelings. I'm like, no, there's more to it than feelings. Feelings are important. You got to bring the mind into it. So kind of coming opposite direction. But what you said there is so critical, I think. It's when you get the heart and the mind aligned, the mind can operate at an entirely new level, a level that most people don't even realize is possible. And I think that's what's so powerful about the work that I witness you doing, and in the conversations we've had about it, because you get people in that alignment and then they just take off and they do things they never believed were possible before, or at least maybe just dreamed about the possibility of that. So let's talk a little bit deeper. We've been talking about the heart. Let's dive a little deeper into that. And you threw some interesting statements out there about the heart sends more information to the brain, and there's a lot of communication going on there. So talk a little bit about that, because there might be a lot of listeners that are on this that really are not familiar with the science behind this that you're aware of.
Sure. Well, again, heartmath.com, heartmath.org is a credible organization out of Northern California, Boulder Creek, which is in between San Jose and Santa Cruz. And they've been researching the intelligence of the heart and heart rate variability for over 30 years. They have 300 peer-reviewed scientific articles and research, and they've dove into truly the intelligence of the heart and how the heart has its own ability to think and feel and remember, and it's what they consider the intuitive center of our human experience. And if there's entrepreneurs out there, they did a big research study that 80%, 90% of entrepreneurs rely heavily on major decisions on their intuition. And that ability to connect with your heart, and when that becomes a commonplace, you can really access some powerful information that might be more sustainable than sometimes our mind.
It's interesting. I lost you there for a second, so I think you paused there. But it's interesting. As we're going through a time like this right now.
Okay, there we are.
There we go.
There
okay,
we are.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we found that the heart has 4 purposes. It's a pump, right? We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a hormonal gland, so it releases neurotransmitters, as well as a big one, oxytocin, the love drug.
Yeah.
So the love hormone, and again, that's such a powerful one. It's an electric device. It's obviously, when there's electricity, there's magnetism too. It's 100,000 times more powerful electrically than the brain, 5,000 times more powerful magnetically than the brain. So in order to measure brain activity, you have to put sensors on the brain, on the head. They can measure heart rhythms 5 feet off the body, and if they had better equipment, it could probably be further. So really, that idea of what the heart, the electro fields that it's broadcasting, is really what we're sending into the environment, and how we can influence the environment without even saying a word. That's why, again, somebody walks in a room, sometimes you feel like, wow, I really like this person. They haven't even said a word. Or another person, you're like, I got to get away from them. There's a feeling about that. And then the 4th thing is it's its own neurological device. It's got its own ganglia and memory and its whole processing of information. And if you want to look up anything interesting, go look up heart transplants and how people have taken on behaviors and artistic and emotional qualities of the person they received the heart from. So there's really a ton of information that is translated in those heart transplants. And it's really fascinating. But the whole idea is that there is a whole world of intelligence that sits right in our chest. And it's no coincidence that it's been since Greek philosophy and even beyond, it's been driven into our subconscious and unconscious in music and art and literature and, speak from the heart to heart connection. You can go on the heart of a warrior, you name it. So there's just some brilliant stuff there. And again, the main thing is that it's got its own ability to communicate. But then again, if we're trying to influence our brain, it is a 9-to-1 ratio of information from the heart to the brain rather than the brain to the heart. It literally, the amygdala in the brain, which they talk about being the fear center, and that's kind of a little false, but it's really the familiar center, because it's got cells that are synced up with the heart's cells. And again, based on the rhythms that are being broadcast from the heart, the brain will get those rhythms. And if it's in a depleting or negative emotional state, it'll direct the brain into the lower quadrants, the subcortical quadrants, and it'll just have a harder time getting to the higher neocortex and frontal cortex, compared to when we're in a coherent field and we're generating positive, renewing emotions. It's an instant access to the higher functioning brain. And that's why, again, we're in positive renewing, or when you're in positive emotional states, you come up with great ideas and creativity and good problem solving and all those things. So again, the work-life balance is important, and getting into nature and doing things that renew you are big, investments into your professional and personal development.
That's fascinating. I was not aware of all of that information about the heart, especially the way that they're connected. I mean, obviously, there's some of this I knew, but not at that level. So what is it when you're working with athletes, as an example, especially these top tier athletes who are just, they've already made it to the top, 0.0001% of whatever it is, right? They're the very elite, and especially if you're working with an MVP. How does that heart alignment with the mind really play out in a sports situation?
Well, again, I mean, most of these guys are in team environments. And if you're the leader and the guy that everybody's looking to, in a lot of these cases, they don't want to mess up, and they're just trying to they're showing up, and there's a little bit of a fear playing with the best player. So how do you get them to be at their best? How do you get your teammates to play with you and support them and create coherency with the people around you? And that's the power of this work, is you realize, as I set myself into a connected place, and I put in a little commitment of time and effort into my relationship with self, my heart and my mind, then all of a sudden I show up and I can bring people with me. I can draw them in. And now you're playing at a higher level because guys are able to play with you. And now you're making more points and they're getting points, and whoever plays with them, or, again, these different athletes, or deserving, feeling like, again, you might have this confidence of wanting to go play, and I can be confident to get there, but underneath you're still dealing with deserving or worthiness, or you got anxiety whether the coach likes you, and that's going to create distortion in performance. And the brain's you're going to play with a grip and a stick, or the ball's going to be harder, and things are going to be faster. They've shown that when you're in a coherent heart rhythm, 100-mile-per-hour fastball slows down to 80 miles per hour. Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with, again, you're in a confident inner peace, inner state, compared to, I better get this hit. I'm not sure, that whole being that ends up keeping either the brain compromised, or in the higher frontal cortex, which is the frontier of the human frontier, is in the front of the brain, as we know.
Well, it's interesting because when you get into the state of flow, that psychological state, they know that the time center of the brain quiets down, and they know that the call it self-awareness, but it's that part that distinguishes us, separates us from what's around us, that quiets down, so we become one with whatever's happening, whatever we're doing. So to me, it's fascinating that there's so much more information can come in and be processed through those senses, like your eyes watching the fastball come in. So it seems like it slows down, and you're like, how does that happen? And I think the best example that I can think of is, well, maybe not an example, but people could look to their own lives and say, okay, where does it happen where time has been distorted in a positive way for me? It either slows down and I just get so much more richness of information, or in some cases, maybe it speeds up, and it's like, wow, I didn't realize time passed that quickly, but that's because you're so focused on what's happening, especially when you're with a loved one or something like that, or having a great conversation with a friend, time passes, you don't even realize it's passed. So that's kind of plays in a little bit with that there. So it's interesting. We're talking about sports, but I know you've also done work with entrepreneurs, with leaders.
Yeah.
How does this idea? Because I think in today's world, especially, and I'm gonna kind of jump in here. We're talking in the midst of the social separation, if you will, the physical separation. A lot of people are not back to work yet; they're working remotely. So in this environment, I've been saying, that, gosh, we have got to be out in front of people. People have to see our faces. We have to connect with people. And what I'd love to get is your perspective on how should leaders in this time, much less when they're in the office together, how should they be engaging and connecting so there's that coherence even remotely in their environments?
Well,
I didn't promise you easy questions.
No, that's great. Well, what I like about this question is it sets it up for the three relationships: your relationship with self, relationship with others, and the relationship with the environment. And if you're not taking time to invest in that first relationship, the relationship with yourself, if you're not dedicating time to reflect and give attention to the inner world, what's going to happen is those other two relationships are going to dictate that first one are going to heavily influence that. So that idea of when you have an opportunity now to maybe dedicate 10, 15, 30 hour more time because you're not commuting or you're not doing, and carve out that time to commit to yourself, whether it's breathing, meditation, hypnosis, you can 1,000 things, journaling, reflection, podcasts, just going inward. And what happens is the magic is you have much more influence over those other two relationships. And you all of a sudden now those two relationships aren't dictating your human experience. You're dictating your experience with those two things. And that's the power I believe that we're given right now, is that this is, everybody's forced back home. Everybody's going back to the what I would call in the energy realm, you have male energy, which is expansive, and you got female energy, which comes back and goes in. And this feminine energy is really like the looking inward. The male energy is looking outward. So this idea of like bringing things back into balance. And in performance, whether you're high-level sales or whether you're in athletics or you're a business, running a business, your optimal place is in that balance state. So you can adapt to the needs when it calls for you, or you can recover quickly. But in that balance, you're able to, take in more information. And that goes for healing. In healing, the nervous system is at its best when it's in a balanced state. And again, a lot of what I've seen over the years in my clinic is people in hyper conditioned states. Either they're, high stress, high intensity, their bodies are tense. They want a quick fix, and it's not. It's just not a quick fix. And or hypo, like lethargic, and they just haven't, it's all about getting back to this middle ground. And I believe that's what this does, is it when we're balanced, now we can adapt to the challenges that are coming at our way, and we're not overcompensating and we're not undercompensating. We're able to meet it with a clear mind and a clear heart. And that's where, my suggestion and what I've been guiding people is really saying this is a great opportunity. Find the things that inspire you. Go back to what are these things that you grew up really being drawn to. What inspires you to, like, outside of this work or the information that you think about that really gets you going, and go find that. Find a way to stimulate that, and then let go. Just let go. And that's the power of meditation or breathing, as you let go, and all of a sudden you come back online and there's an idea. There's a solution. There's a creative way of looking at it.
That's such a really interesting way of looking at it, because if we're coming back home, we're coming back in, we're not looking out there, because we have so much uncertainty about what is going to happen. We don't know. And so it gives us this opportunity, if we're willing to take it, to look within, to look at ourselves and say, okay, where do we want to go? And I like that question. So anyone who's watching this, even if you're watching the replay, think about what inspires you. What is it that calls you and lights you up and gets you to that state where when you go back into what you're doing, you're more creative, more productive, more on fire with what you're doing. Drop it out here in the chat. If you have any questions for Pierre as well, as we're going through this, drop it out here in the chat. It's fascinating. This is just, you and I could talk for hours on this. It's really intriguing to me.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Something that came, I don't want to lose this, is that I've created this peacemaking ceremony with one of the most respected Navajo medicine elders. And this Phil Bluehouse out of Arizona, he actually was in the FBI Drug Enforcement Division in the Rockies for 30 years. But in that time, he also was practicing medicine in the Navajo Nation. And I've been fortunate enough to tutelage and mentor with him, and we've co-created this peacemaking process, which where there's peace, there's healing. Where there's healing, there's peace. And right now, there isn't a lot of peace. Is there? Do you see it? Yeah, I mean, there's peaceful protests, but are we being delivered that in the media?
Right.
Not so much,
Right.
Or the talking points are trying to tell us otherwise.
Right.
But in this chaotic time, it doesn't feel very peaceful. And so it's hard to really heal situations if people aren't feeling peace. Where there's peace, there's healing. Where there's healing, there's peace. So even in business, what are the areas in your business that need some healing? What are the relationships that need to be spoken to? Or what are the customers that need some healing? What difficult conversations need to happen, or extra support needs to happen? And or just take it aside and have some humanistic heart-to-heart connection. And again, listening from the heart and speaking from the heart feels a lot different than speaking and hearing from the mind, right? And again, those are great skills that can truly change very quickly. And your new baseline behaviors and heart rhythms and physiology and brain activity can change in a month very quickly. It's not that hard. And it just takes a little bit of challenging yourself to just do something a little different.
It's funny you say that, because I often catch myself, and I fully mean what I say, but it's funny when I observe myself saying it. I'm in my uber analytical mode, and I say the data doesn't feel right, or this doesn't feel right, my conclusion here. And people look at me like, this is not about feelings. I'm like, actually it is. There's a pattern in the data here I can sense, but I haven't yet been able to show it in the statistical, realm. And it's a matter of if I stick with it, like intuitively, I have been able to say, okay, I know something is coming. And it's not a confirmation bias. At the end, we run it through statistical analysis and we prove, yes, this really was there, right? And I'm not always right, but I kind of sense that there's something off. So I kind of joke about that. It's like I'm the analyst who feels things, I feel like, that's just weird, man.
Yeah, but there's so much, again, there's so much that we don't know.
Yeah.
And we're just really bridging those things now. And the amount of books and information coming out about the heart-brain connection is really profound.
Yeah.
And like, if you step back, just an interesting little tidbit, in fetal development, the first genesis of the nervous system is the neural tube. And the neural tube is this, again, the genesis of the nervous system, but you have these little mitochondria that pull cells from the neural tube. And they start a whole new little pod away from the neural tube, and that becomes the brain. And the neural tube becomes the heart. So literally the brain comes from the heart. And if you look at how that information flows, it's really our autonomic nervous system is 90% of our body's function, the sympathetic, parasympathetic. And that runs through the heart. And if we're feeling overwhelm or anxiety or judgment or this exhaustion, or I'm not doing enough, which is another layer of even Mark Haddis saying the number one stressor being incomplete goals. What does that do? That creates distortion, and that's going to influence our physiology, which is going to impact our mind. But more importantly, when we're looking to connect with people and make connections, that is at the heart. And are you broadcasting incoherent feelings and emotions, or are you broadcasting coherent emotions or coherent renewing emotions? Two different experiences. And again, when somebody's trying to put on a happy face, yet you're feeling something different. If anybody has a significant other, you know that. Oh, how are you doing, honey? I'm fine. Oh, obviously you're not, but there's a whole nother layer to that, and that you can feel that even when they're not saying anything. So to use those skills to really have breakthrough conversations and connect with clients and check in with clients. It's one of the greatest tools you can possibly do, is start a conversations, check in on a humanistic level. How are you doing? You doing okay? Like, everything okay in your personal world, your work world? Just having some compassion. And compassion, they found, is the highest level of love. And to just have compassion towards yourself and others, it creates an entrainment, cohesion between each other. So that, I believe that we have a great opportunity to use the heart as our biggest ally in building these relationships, building your business, making these connections, so people will think of you when they need something, because they know you're there, and they know they can rely on you. Or when you're trying to build a business that, hey, those are the people I love to follow. Heart-focused people that support that heart with their mind. They're great people. And that's exactly what you're describing yourself as. You're a feeling strategist. You're a feeling analyst. It's great, man. Connecting those two together. And that's why I always just love anything you put out. I'm just
appreciate
eat
that.
it up, man. Yeah, it's I really value what you do, and you really put out incredible information. You really do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As you were talking there, it reminded me, there's an exercise that I've taken salespeople through a lot of times, customer service people through, and it's when I'll use your term, there's an incoherence in what they believe and what they're trying to sell. And it's not that they don't believe in the product or service. It's like they may not be willing to buy it because it's just not their thing, right? And the hotel industry is an example. I did this probably, I think the first training was maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And this hotel was not able to do upsells. And they were like, we're just going to get rid of, the 120 sales reservation agents and front desk agents because they can't sell these rooms. They're $40 a night more. We just keep giving them away. And they were just at corporate. They were just going ballistic about this. And I was like, okay, can I go down there and do a little training with, what are you going to do? I said, can I go down there? Like, okay, fine. They paid for the plane ticket. They flew me down there. And I did like this 90-minute training with the first half of the group and 90-minute training with the second half of the group. And it was teaching them about the brain, teaching them about some things like this. And they're kind of like, this is different, but there was this key part of the exercise that I took them through. And it was basically, they spent 5 minutes, because I had done my research, and what I found out is that almost, I think 95% of the people in the room had never actually set foot, except on their boarding tour, had never gone into those upgraded rooms. They had never stayed there. They didn't even know. I mean, they could name the features and all that and benefits and all that, but they could not actually, they had no feeling of what it was like to be there. So I paired them up, and I had them each in their own mind kind of go through what it was like. Either they were with their significant other there for vacation, or they were there on business and they're on the patio drinking cocktails, whatever it was. I said, you make it up for 5 minutes. I want you in your own imagination making this up. Then I want you to spend 2 minutes telling your partner what you did and how great this was. And it's connecting the heart and the mind, right? That's what it was.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have called it back back then, but that's what it was. And so they come out of that exercise. They are just, the whole room, just the energy shifted. This was toward the end of the 90 minutes. We finished up and all that. They all go back to work. Take a second group, do the same thing through them. I get a call a week later, and the director of the whole team, he calls me and says, Tony, I don't know what you did, but we just sold this past week as many upgrades as we sold the entire month before. I was like,
yes, it's right.
And so I've used that same training, talk to sales teams or whatever else. It's kind of like my give, when I'm on stage, I talk to them about whatever else, I give them this training. I'm like, let's go back. Yeah. I call it the best sales day ever. I have them go back in their memory to the best sales day ever. What'd you feel? What'd you think? I take them the whole process, right, for several minutes. And then I have them tell their partner that they're there with, about it. And they say, okay, now here's the key. The next time you get on the phone, before you pick up that phone or before you walk into that sales meeting, bring yourself back to this memory of the feeling. Don't worry about what you're thinking. Come back to the memory of the feeling, and monitor yourself during the meeting, and make sure that you stay in that feeling tone and trust whatever comes out of your mouth. Do not second guess it. Just stay in that feeling tone. And it's funny because I never really connected some of the dots as far as what's happening until we're talking right here. Inevitably, it calls the people that actually do this exercise and come back and put it in practice. They're like, I just outsold my best day ever. I was like, okay, now you've got a new standard to work with, and just keep ratcheting it up.
Yes. It's the same. It's really the same thing I'm doing with athletes too, is that, listen, before you get on the ice, it's not just this visualization, which is a great part of it, but let's anchor in what you really want to feel out there. What do you want to feel? You can always come back to that feeling. Just feel. What do you want to feel? I want to feel calm and composed. Perfect. Think you can anchor yourself in this? Let's get it in your heart. Feel that. What does that feel like? Think of a time you felt that. What were you doing? All that. Let's take that on the ice. What does it feel like to see the ice in that, or see the court, or see the field? in that state. And again, they start to anchor that in. And yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's like feeling is really gives you that access into that flow state, because then it becomes, you're just in it. You're in the feeling.
If they get so focused on in a positive way, not like overwhelmed, but they get so focused on this feeling and maintaining that feeling state, that it's like all the doubt, the self-doubt, the judgment, the evaluation, just there's no place for it. You can't maintain those two things at the same time. So if the feeling is strong enough and they maintain their focus there, all the other stuff falls away. And that's when they hit that peak level of performance, or they at least have the opportunity to hit that peak level of performance.
And that's really what I've been excited by is again, you work with highest level and MVP in different categories too. And one of my favorite clients that I work with is former Olympic hockey coach who's running a major Division I hockey program, and helping connect with this guy that has a huge hockey career, and just multiple levels, pro coaching and all this. And what makes him a great coach is his openness to be coached. And I think that's a beautiful thing. But the capacity that his heart, he's just a heart guy, and he wants to change. He wants to support people's transformation with his heart. And that is a powerful field. And listen, at the end of the day, if you go to bed, yes, innovation is exciting, but it's really the relationships, at the end of the day, it's our relationships. How much do we connect, and how much can we do that and support each other in this process? And man, are we in the middle of that right now, and have been for a while. And at this point, people's behaviors have started to change, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And who knows what's going to come out of it? The innovation out of this time, and I know a big one's going to be in the wellness industry and the well-being industry, and how that plays into business, and that balance of people's well-being, being disconnected and connected, sort of dichotomy that's happening. How we're all very connected online, but how we're becoming disconnected in other ways.
It's fascinating. I was on a call today, a coaching call with the leadership team of a company, and we are actually talking about this idea of the innovation, and using customer feedback as innovation, information for innovation. And what we were talking about is the relationship that they have with their individual customers or clients, and how the better that relationship is, the better that connectivity and the coherence between them, the more valuable the information they're going to get, because people are going to open up and talk to them, and it was interesting, as you saw, I could see the light bulbs start to go on as I'm watching them all on camera, like they're kind of getting it. They're like, and then all of a sudden someone's like, oh, you mean like, and they give an example, and it's so powerful because this heart-centered coherence, right? It doesn't ignore the mind. It actually enhances the mind. And I think really getting that point across, I think tonight is one of the reasons that I wanted to talk with you, because it's like, we can get so focused on the mental and the intellectual and the logical side of things that we lose our heart, we lose our emotions, and our emotions are so important in the experience of life. They create that experience in essence with us. So, okay. So we've covered the athletics. We've talked about the business side of things. Where else do you want to go? Is there something on your mind that you want to take?
Yeah, I mean, there's always fascinating stuff here, but I do want to say that, we've all had the experience, like where somebody's upset and you tell them to calm down, or calm down. They're like, don't tell me to calm down. Like, they get upset. And in athletics, we see this a lot. And even in businesses, you see people retreating, they're fired up. But again, what happens is when we're in negative or depleting emotions, and these are triggers, and even when we logically try to suppress and depress and push those down to perform or keep plowing forward in what we're trying to do in our business, and in the background you have these emotions that are just they're stewing in the heart, and this will show up in legitimate heart rhythms. And there's many things that you can easily see it, incoherent rhythms. And if that's the case, again, your physiology is off, your nervous system's off, your hormones are off, Cortisol is being dumped into your system when you're in an incoherent field. But I just want to really pound this home that what happens in the brain is you stay in these similar cycles. That's why it's hard to change behavior in a depleting emotional state. It's hard to do it because we're in the part of our brain that wants to stay the same. And when we move into the renewing part, renewing emotions, it literally opens up the highest in cortical functioning. So that is our access point to the inspiration that we need to make the change, to be inspired to stick with something, to stop waiting and just do it. But when we're, I don't know. I mean, it's just, that's all I can tell you on that one. But the one thing I do want to say is right now I'm giving this talk barefoot in the sand in the back in Michigan right now. I'm obviously passionate about the connection to the earth. And that's a big part of my coaching. And I've even coached the former mayor of Chicago for many years. I would tell him, you've been getting your feet in the ground. You've been getting your feet in the ground, and you'd always have some crass response, but he would do it, And but one of the big things in performance is also we are the most sophisticated electronic piece of equipment on the planet, and nobody's grounded. All high-powered technology pieces of electrical equipment need to be grounded for them to run properly. And here we are in a world and nobody's touching the ground anymore. You go through a park and you'll see people in the past, at least having barbecues in the park, and they're all wearing shoes. Nobody's actually touching the ground. And an amazing thing happens when we touch the ground. Voltage is usually built up on the top of our head. And as soon as we touch the ground, that voltage gets discharged. We become grounded. Really? And then our energy gets pulled down. And again, we have this exchange, this whole science-based driven information out there now. I teach courses on this stuff about how all these biomarkers in the body change when you touch the ground. And as part of, you look at many of the vacations we dream of. What is it? Be at the beach, be in nature, be someplace where I get to relax and get my feet in the ground. There's something there that is calling for us. So in performance, and again, looking at working with athletes, but more important, this well-rounded, the well-being of performance, of that, in athletes, that's one part of their human experience. Just like business, it's one part of their human experience. If you're running a business, it's probably bleeding into a lot of things, but how can we get back to being grounded so we can remember, who am I? Where am I my best? Get clear thinking, let go of the stressors, just kind of take a breath and just feel for a second. Because usually when you take your shoes off, for most people, they usually say, oh, that feels good. That's not, oh, I think good. It's, I feel good. It's getting into that feeling part. And it's a great, again, I find it to be one of the more powerful tools to get us out of our head, get us into our body, just do a little check-in, let alone all the incredible physiological effects that happen inside the body when we actually do touch the ground, because we are electrical creatures first. And then, again, we are electrical creatures.
It's interesting to just, as you talk about that, because one of my daughters is a plant lover. She's got a garden out back. She's like, Dad, can we build a raised bed? And so we did this year. We've actually had a couple, but they've kind of dilapidated over time. So I had to build brand new ones. And she has been out there just loving on those plants, getting her hands in the dirt. She doesn't go barefoot, but she's in the plants, in the dirt, and she's been kind of laid up the last couple of days with something going on here. But then she ended up getting out there today for a while, and she was just so calm and so peaceful as she's out there pulling out weeds and looking at the little caterpillars that are eating her leaves and kind of, But there's this grounding effect that you can see her energy just calm down when she comes back in, And it's such a good thing to see. And it's funny because I was like that growing up too. I loved plants. I'm not an animal lover. I don't hate them. I just don't have that part of me. It's like not there. And but I love plants. I love being out there in nature, touching them, feeling them, doing stuff with them. So I get where you're coming from, because it just changes that whole energy, and the calmness just comes. So there's been some interesting studies also on, as we go out in nature, the sense of awe, and that there's actually a unique emotion now that they're studying scientifically that they call awe. And it's when we feel small in a positive way. We feel small in the presence of something much greater. So like seeing the Grand Canyon, or seeing the redwoods in California, wherever, anything like that, we recognize our smallness, and not in a way in which we feel bad about ourselves, but like just amazed at how the universe or nature or God or whatever it is, that you want to attribute that to, how big these trees are, how do they stand up 300 feet tall, that sense of awe changes how we operate. And it's amazing to see the effects on the brain when we get out there. So I think that's probably related to some of what you're talking about, because we get out there, we touch it, we feel it, we get the sense of awe. So yeah, I've been studying that emotion because it comes out in customer experience sometimes too.
Well, again, tied back to a theme I've said here, is literally, my people ask what I do, and I say, you want to dumb down to the basic? I ground people. That's my job. People come to see me for an assortment of things, or I go to them, or go into an office. I'm grounding them in who they are, empowering them in their own strengths. And that's basically grounding them in their core values, and where they feel their best, and empowering them that they have the capacity to heal themselves, in relationships around them, the environment around them. And where I said earlier, where there's healing, there's peace. And this ability that we do have this great capacity to be our own healers. And people say, oh, Pierre, you're a healer. I am for myself. And I'm here to teach you how to be a healer for yourself. And everybody on this call knows a caregiver in their life, or had a mom, or maybe they're a caregiver themselves. A caregiver is a standalone battery that wears itself down. A healer, a true healer, is a conduit, a facilitator. It just runs energy. That's why HEEL and HEAL are the same word. When we're grounded through our heels, we are healing. We're healing HEEL, and we're HEAL. We're running current. We're running an energy through us. We're open to receive more. We can take in more. And again, you look at high power piece of electronic equipment. If it's not grounded, it takes a surge off the network. Fritz. If we're not grounded ourselves, we get hit with a big problem. We have a physical problem, a big stress business problem. All of a sudden, our capacity is not there. We get diminished, and we get fritzy, and we can't think straight. So, but when we're grounded in our strengths, and we put that time into the relationship with self, we can take those hits and run it through us, and exhale, and kind of, okay, wait a second. It's in the end of the world. I'm still standing. I'm still alive. I got this. I have the tools to connect my heart. What do I really want to feel here? I've been doing my work. I feel confident. I feel loving and compassionate towards myself first, as a leader, as a pioneer, a visionary, whatever you are. And then guess what? Your mind's going to think a lot better, and you're going to have a great solution at that point to a problem. But again, you're creating the healing. And you know what? If you're leading people, they will love being around that energy. They do.
Absolutely. They do. They love it. Well, so if anyone's got a question out there for Pierre, go ahead and throw it in the chat box here. If you got a comment or anything else, I'm going to go back a couple minutes ago. We had some messages come through here. So Jackie Hancock, do you know Jackie?
Yeah, Jackie, right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I thought you did. I just wanted to,
Yeah, we haven't officially met, maybe crossed voices here and there, but
right.
Yeah.
Through the different programs and that. Yeah. So she says, seeing a vulnerable person smile and laugh is what inspires her. I posted out there when you asking what inspires people, I posted that out there. So that's what she wrote. And
it's really nice.
She says she loves Pierre, the tree hugger, by the way. So yes. So let's go back.
I can't help it.
Let's go back to that for a second, because we talked about that. I introduced you and called you the first legitimate tree hugger that I've ever met, and I mean that with full love in my heart, because I know what it means to you. So what is it? Why do you go in nature and hug a tree? What do you get out of that? What do you feel out of that?
Well, it's interesting because when I teach courses on this, and I've taught at environmental conferences, I've brought hockey teams into nature, I've taken MVPs of the NHL into nature and taught them how to do this. And when you feel and connect with people, and specifically in nature or dog lovers, or when you can touch a tree, oh, you're freezing on me. Maybe that's when you touch a tree, I often say, what do you feel? And people are like, I don't know. I don't know what I feel. I'm not sure what I feel. And I'm like, okay, that's your mind. Connect to your heart. Take some breaths in and out at your heart. Spend time, just focus on your heart. And all of a sudden, I feel something. I feel rhythm. I feel some pulse or something. Okay, let's go to a different tree and let's touch another tree. Let's do the same thing. Connect to your heart. Breathe in and out of the heart. I feel a different feeling. And so these living organisms send out frequencies. Anything that's alive has a magnetic field around it. And this is actually, can I share one piece? I know we're about done, but this is some heart math research that I find fascinating. Do we got a second?
We'll take as much time as, you can go, take as much time as you want. You know, I'll go as long as you want to go.
Well, this inspires me, and whoever's listening, this, you know, we're in a global world of just, there's so much going on, right? And again, my belief is there's heartfulness before mindfulness. You got to get the heartfulness in, and you get the information going to the brain to tell it can be mindful, and to tell it can go to that frontal. You're going to have a lot more success being in meditation or in visualization or in imagining what you want, because your brain's in that coherent space. They did a research. They have a global coherence project on every continent except Antarctica. They have equipment built into the ground that's measuring the Earth's electromagnetic field, the big field around the Earth. And that they found that it goes in 10-year cycles. We're actually at a peak right now. And at peaks, there's usually big global experiences that create chaos, but also create big innovations at the same time. But with that, in their research, they took 110 people in 10 different countries and monitored their heart rhythms to see just where they went through incoherent versus coherent rhythms. And they measured it for a month. After that month, they took the data back, and they found that 2/5 of the participants were in sync with the Earth's electromagnetic field. Another 2/5 of the participants were in polar opposites. So their heart rhythms were in direct opposite to the Earth's electromagnetic field. And then you had about 1/5 that were sort of flatlining, didn't have any real relatable signal there. They got everybody on a call at the same time, multiple different languages, and guided them through one of their basic heart-focused exercises. And after 15 minutes, they took in the data, and everybody was synced up with the Earth's electromagnetic field. And so this access to connecting to our environment, to the Earth, through the heart, by opening this up to, and how the sequence goes is you focus on your heart, the area of your heart. You imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart. And as you do that for a few minutes, you breathe there. You sustain and initiate and sustain a positive renewing emotion such as care, compassion, love, gratitude, joy, peace, one of my favorites, for yourself or somebody else in your life. It means a lot to you. And as you feel that in your heart, that feeling and choosing that emotion and sustaining it, you now begin to broadcast it to yourself and to the world around you. And as you emit it outward, that's the magic. That's in that sequence where you sync up to your environment. And what they've shown is, again, we're impacting the coherence in a room. You can impact a room's environment without saying a word. You can impact a Zoom call without saying a word. Just your presence and what you're broadcasting into the field. So it's really some powerful stuff there that I just can't emphasize enough. Spend time in your heart. What is your heart telling you? What is the magic it's telling you? What is the pain it's telling you? More times than not, whoever's listening on here, you're tired. You're probably very tired deep down. and honor that. Give it some attention. Give yourself some attention, because you're going to come back and perform even better than before if you honor that heart and honor some of that fatigue and exhaustion, and give it just some attention. You're going to come back on the other end, and you're going to have more compassion to your employees and your coworkers and your family, and that's just going to be a great investment into your life.
I love that, because there's this element of, as you said earlier, the three relationships, the relationship with self, the relationship with others, and the relationship with environment. I think you've got to have compassion. You said yours is peace, mine is compassion. That's where I've been focused on for a while now. And I often say to people, you have to have fierce compassion for yourself and others. I know those two words don't go together usually, but I really do believe in today's day and age, you need fierce compassion for yourself, because you've got to step out of that sense of guilt and anger and frustration and judgment at least long enough to get a different perspective, to try to understand, maybe I should feel guilty. Maybe that is the right emotion to be feeling, but to step back from it for a moment to really evaluate what other story could there be? What else in the background could be causing me to feel these things? And is it someone else's mindset? Is it someone else's framework that I'm thinking from and not my own? But I honestly don't think we can get out of that mental paradigm that we're stuck in until we have the compassion to step back and just say, what if I just gave myself a little bit of space? I honored that, as you said. I'm tired. Let me just go rest for a while. We have one of the organizations that I'm on the board of is a nonprofit. It's called the Personal Impact Foundation, and our sole focus is to help the professions of the lawyers, the medical professionals, and the dentists, because those three professions have the highest suicide and addiction rates. People don't want to talk about it, but it's a reality. And so we're working very closely with the students that are going into those professions, and it's compassion and breathing and just being able to take a step back for a moment is so powerful and something that they need to do. And so, Pierre, I really appreciate you being able to talk about this, because I don't think we have enough people talking about it, which is one of the reasons I'm so glad you were on tonight. That we do this. And this is going to go beyond tonight. I think people are going to be watching this replay.
Well, I do want to say I am a principal in a social emotional intelligence company. We haven't fully talked about that, but I've been doing work with
HAP, share some more about
Human
that.
Accelerated Performance, haptraining.com. And HAP training, we do right now, we've been doing primarily online and working with companies over Zoom, and usually we'd always be in person, and we don't even really advertise. It's always just been word of mouth, because it is such a heart-driven business and teaching those skills. But again, the frontier, the human frontier, is in that social emotional development, putting us in a place that our higher brain can stay on innovation, stay in front of the algorithm, stay in front of the technology, and keep driving the ship and being in charge of that. And that's requiring us to be at the frontier of our brain. But if we're stressed and overwhelmed and overworked and giving attention to other parts of our lives and just ditching a bunch of other stuff that's causing relationship distortion, you know what's going to happen? You're going to be in the back of your brain. You're not going to be there. You're just not. The heart won't let you go there. You're going to want solutions, and you're going to want to stay on the cutting edge, but your heart's telling you, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I got too much going, too many sticks in the fire, whatever it is. So again, the growth is committing to the relationship with self and carving out that time and taking that time to be at peace or in compassion or those powerful states of feeling that really create coherence in your body, so your physiology changes and the brain communication changes. And then that's your ticket. That's your ticket. You turn that into a practice in your morning rituals and, quick little check-ins and pre-check-ins before meetings and important calls, and, your transition from work to home and life, all those little moments, there's small little segues, small little transitions are great opportunities to reconnect with your heart and say, what do I want to do now that I'm moving into this different subculture of my life that has different demands and different relationships and different requirements? Can I have compassion for myself first so I can be available to those, like, again, your kids and your family. I know that's so important to you. So
I love that. And it's something that if I'm going to pause on that element of moving for those little subcultures. For me, the term I use is moments, right? There's moments of our lives. And I think if we were to step back and look at a day, a lot of times we probably look at it and say, I used to do this all the time. That's my day. I encompass the whole thing together. I had a bad day. I had a good day. Instead of pausing and separating out and saying, okay, there was moments, there was events, there's these pieces. Some of it felt really good and some of it didn't feel good. And it's interesting. My girls are now 14 and 16. Actually, tomorrow, one of them turns 15. So, we're going through a lot of this whole idea of getting them aware of their emotions. We've been doing this for years, but there's always new levels of this, right? And with my 16-year-old, I was talking, I think it was earlier this week, and I was talking about this whole idea of fear. And because fear is one of those emotions that stops us, or we run away. It stops us from forward momentum. We either run away, we freeze, we flee, we fight, yeah, all of that. And in that, I said, I honestly don't believe most people fear a particular event. As an example, what I think they fear is that unpleasant emotion that they imagine will happen if they find themselves in a particular event. And that emotion comes up because of what they believe will happen and how they'll have to respond to it. Like they'll be embarrassed, or they'll have to explain to someone why they did something, or maybe they can't succeed in a particular thing. And so the fear is never about the event itself. It's about what they're feeling in their imagination. And it's a very real feeling in this moment that triggers the fear, because none of us want to feel bad. None of us want to feel those contractive, unpleasant emotions. And it all, I point to the heart because that's where I feel myself. I can feel my chest just, contract upon itself. So give us a little bit, if you can, there about if someone is in a fear state, because I think there are a lot of people with uncertainty and fear right now. What is something that they can do maybe on in the morning, in the evening, at some point in the day? I've got you here, so I just want to tap into this. Say, what can they do to really move out of that state, at least for a moment, and then over time expand that? Because you said that things can change in 30 days. So I'm curious, what can they do?
Yeah, well, what I'm hearing when you say that, like, there's this one word that keeps screaming at me is doubt. Like, there's doubt in there. Everything you just said, there's a level of doubt. And doubt causes you to freeze. It creates inactivity. It keeps you stuck. And what's the antidote to that? The antidote is take action. And if you can't take action in that, take action in a different direction. And when we freeze, it is such a response in the body. And it's probably been trained in us before, right? So our emotional limbic system has been programmed it's not the conditions, it's our response to the conditions. So whatever we've trained ourselves is what we're going to create, right? And we're going to keep repeating that. So to be able to commit to a just small little moment of time in the morning where you just see yourself, even in the power of visualization. We talk about this in extreme focus and in years of hypnosis, is the power even not only visualizing yourself succeeding, but visualizing a hiccup happening and how you respond to that hiccup. When things, just even imagining something not going well and how you would recover and preparing for that. Because in athletics, I know it's a huge part is half the game it's failing. It's just, half the game is failing. So how are you going to respond to that failure? And that's as an important input into the brain is seeing yourself responding positively or taking that and moving quickly and transforming it. So for these tools, I just can't emphasize enough about obviously breath. Breath mastery is life mastery. I know we talk about mind mastery is life mastery, but breath, if you're not breathing, you're not living, right? Take a breath in when you come in the world. When you leave, you exhale. So your quality of your life, your spirit lives in your breath. So we can harness that. And just, if there's one breath exercise, two. I'm going to give you two breath exercises. If you can just focus on horizontal breathing, lateral expansion of your breath. When you initiate a breath, you feel tension in your body. You wake up, your back's tight, your body's stiff, your mind's tight. You get stressed on a phone call, or you're running late to something. Whatever that stress is, if you catch yourself in that tense state, that gripping state, that fear, what's happening is, and this has been programmed since infancy, the diaphragm collapses. We contract. Our physiology does this. And so the number one way to get us out of that, again, that's where it collapses, is what we call the power center. The power center is right here in our solar plexus. So if that's shutting down, we're losing power to this external thing. So how do we gain power back? How do we empower ourselves? You got to open that back up. And that's going to happen by, first things first, take a lateral expansive breath. Breathe into the sides of your body, your ribs, your underarms, your armpits, the sides of your hips, whatever you can think of. Just touch the sides of your body. Just get that expansion. Even lean a little forward. If you lean a little forward and you take a breath in, you'll immediately expand into the back. The ribs, floating ribs will flare out, and the diaphragm will expand, and then it can go in all different directions. And that is a deep down primal response to start to relax. From there, now you can shift into your heart. Now you get your breathing going. Okay, I got this under control. Where am I at? Oh, my heart's fluttering like crazy right now because I'm nervous. What do I want to feel? Breathe in and out of the heart. Listen, your heart's going to, your brain might tell you, I want to feel confident. You know what? Your heart probably going to tell you, just be patient, be accepting, just be compassionate for where you're right now, which is stressful. And you know what? You're not going to go to confidence. Your mind wants you to go there, but your heart's probably going to say, easy now. Let's have some compassion here. Let's go take little baby steps till we get there. And that's an important point. So lateral expansion when you're in those states, what they call horizontal breathing, and that really will trigger the ability for your whole breath mechanism to change.
That's an awesome tip. Thank you. I'm like, okay, I need to use that a lot. So do you have a few minutes? Because something came up as you were talking. Okay, cool. I can see, I think your daughter was peeking out the window there behind you.
Oh, was she?
Yeah, she's a little cutie.
That's so funny. Yeah.
I love it. So you were talking about in the visualization responding, like, well, my term is responding, but you're talking about like, if something happens, how are they going to respond to it? And it's a very good choice of words, in my opinion, because it's not reaction. And the last thing I was thinking about is like, we were going to talk about how these pro athletes, and I think very much business leaders fall in the same boat, entrepreneurs fall in the same boat.
Yep.
How do they bounce back? Exactly. How do they bounce back? And I think you were touching on that right there, because it's not about reaction, automatic reaction. It's about responding, and that visualization of seeing themselves, not because they want to go through a failure or an unpleasant moment, but they're empowering themselves if they see themselves in that situation and see themselves move through that situation. It's like they build that confidence and that awareness that, oh, there's a way through this. And so talk a little bit more about that and the power of that with the visualization.
Okay. Well, what can happen too is let me backtrack. Like yesterday, I taught yesterday morning, and I did not prepare properly. Was up too late, and or what was that, yesterday or the day? Yeah, I think it was yesterday morning. Wasn't grounded in my presentation, and just my own self-assessment. It kind of dropped dead. It was incoherent. It wasn't well laid out. I didn't give attention to it. And so I walked away after the hour and a half class going, oh man, like self-judgment and the doubt and just go, oh, just hanging on that. And, take that self-pride, if you want to call it, just taking a big hit. And I said, okay, I'm going to give myself about 5 minutes here. I'm going to pack in this distortion, this feeling into about 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, I'm letting it go. I'm packaging it up, putting it down the river. But I'm going to pack in this discomfort and this shame or whatever the feelings I have, this unworthiness that we all have in the background. Just pack it in there for 5 minutes. And after that 5 minutes, I'm done. I'm moving forward with positive attitude. And that I can't emphasize enough. When failures happen or things didn't go well and you're kind of ruminating about how things didn't go well, put a time limit on, set it up, package it in a situation, give it all of its feeling and thoughts and write it down, and then I'm done with it. And if it really means something, I'm going to circle around and speak to that tension. You build so much trust when you're vulnerable. Vulnerability creates trust. And when you're vulnerable with people and you speak to that tension, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, I know what I'm going to say. Next time I have that class, I'm going to speak to it. Just say, hey guys, I just want to speak to something. This is just my integrity. I just wasn't as great as prepared as I was before. Didn't feel like things came across. So can we just circle around on a couple of these topics so I can make sure we get the clarity around it? And that'll lead us into something different. So those are some things that I've used to help sort of move some of those distortions that didn't go well. And even if there's something that I can't circle around on, I just have to package it up and package it up and then package in compassion and get rid of it.
I love that. I love that image of putting everything in that 5 minutes and then packaging it up and letting it go. One of the tools that one of my mentors gave to me was, she said, set an appointment on your calendar. And so like if I'm getting caught up in that, I was going through some pretty tough challenges at one point, and she said, listen, put an appointment on your calendar. And if that doubt, worry, fear, whatever it is, if that emotion comes up and the thoughts, the words that come with that are, chattering in your brain, tell them that you've got an appointment on a calendar. So I literally, for several months, I would actually put this appointment on my calendar, like usually like a Thursday afternoon or something like that. And I would give myself 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever else, usually not more than 30 minutes. But if it started early in the week, I'd put that appointment out there. And like you, I would if by the time I got to Thursday, if that appointment appeared on my calendar, if I had passed through it by that time, I was good. I would look at the appointment and say, oh, you know what? I don't need to have this appointment now. And I'd honor it and move on. But there were times where I had to have that appointment, and I would honor the appointment. And as unpleasant as it is, none of us want to feel that way. But knowing that I can, like you said, pack it in there and get it done, go through it, and then just let it go. And then it was interesting because I began to trust myself that I was going to actually honor those feelings if they came up, if those doubts or worries, because they've got some good stuff to tell you a lot of times. There's some nuggets of gold in there, and so just putting it on my calendar allowed me to free up the rest of the week so I could, and if anything ever came up, said, nope, I'm not talking to you right now. I've got an appointment with you on Thursday at 3 or whatever it was. And that worked wonders for me. It's very much like what you described. So that's why I'm like, I love these types of practices. They're so good. They're so good.
Yeah, and again, what we need more than ever is world-centric leaders. We need these global thought. When you're making decisions as a company or in your position, it's not just this, what's the impact on the globe?
Right.
We're becoming, it's so everybody on this call and everybody that might listen to this call, you are a global leader. You are, and we all can be. And we impact that with our heart in the choices we make towards ourselves, and that is our number one impact.
Yeah.
How we treat ourselves and how we treat our hearts. And if we do that, we're investing in the globe. And from there, you'll be inspired and you'll think better, new ideas, and will start to bring us together. So I think there's just, the heart's the key to it all. I'm telling you, it is.
Well,
It just is.
I love this. So
It's the biggest part of our body too, right here. It's the biggest, broadest part of our body. It emits the most. And the challenge we have is we have this big feeling broadcast, and then the energy moves up through the throat, this tiny tube, and then whether our jaw expresses it or not, which most people don't, they keep the distortion within, grit their teeth. That's the clamp on their emotional expression. And then all of a sudden it's in their neck. Oh yeah, this is where my stress is, headaches, grinding of teeth, shoulder strain, all this is right there. Again, part of that is, people have a little bit of emotional release and all of a sudden they're like, I feel so much better. But nobody's giving themselves that time. And I know everybody on this call or business, there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves, and our identities carry with them. And to be able to unpack that identity a little bit and be able to put it on the shelf and just look inward and just feel the heart, which is really our deepest sense of connection to ourself. Only we know, each person, only we know who we really are. Our parents get pretty close to knowing who we are, maybe our siblings or maybe our loved ones, but only we know the dreams and the visions and the stories and the thoughts and all that. So that's a relationship we have got to nurture for this world to heal. It just is.
Yeah, it's something that I don't think we talk about enough. And if it is talked about, a lot of people shove it to the side and like, that's kind of out there, but when I look at experience of life, and I think this is a key part of what we've been talking about, the transformation of the heart and mind, the transformation of human experience itself. If you can master some level, you don't have to be like the uber master of it all, right? But if you master some level of being able to tap into your heart and to really tune into that coherence of that joy, that peace, that compassion, whatever that emotion is for you in particular, talking to everyone out there in the world, right? It will change how you experience life. And as it changes how you experience life, it will change the trajectory of your path and also the trajectory of human history. Look at it. I mean, we can look around, we can point to events that are happening around us where we've got one person who makes a particular choice, is driven by emotion and does something that harms another person, and it explodes. It's a pattern out there, right? Well, the same thing can happen in the opposite direction. You've got one person who's doing something really powerful for other people to help them to grow, and that can ripple throughout the entire world, can change human experience and the trajectory of human history. And so that's what gets me absolutely excited and thrilled about what you're doing, and being able to have this conversation with you, because I think a lot of people need to hear that, and need to hear that first you've got to transform your relationship with yourself, because that changes your experience of life, which then allows you to change those relationships with other people and with the environment, and that continues to expand the experience of life itself.
Yeah, all of that. Yes. I mean, I was feeling that. I was riding that wave that you're just tossing out there that felt so good. And I agree. And I think what the heart will give you access to is truly your values, what are within you, what you've been, the values you've taken from your parents and your family that aren't theirs, but they're the ones that are yours now. And again, when you're in the heart, you can really, you start to create the coherence of in that. So the mind opens up. Now you got access into what really inspires you. That's your guidance system to the values, your highest values. And now that'll give you the compass, point you in the direction where you're going to see your growth. But if you're trying to do it with your mind, I'm telling you, you're going to get caught up in other people's values. You're going to get caught up in other companies' values and other things. It's going to turn into a hodgepodge up here. It is. It's just, you're going to get influenced by too many other things of what you kind of want to do and should do and all these things. But if you're in your heart and you just have that compassion and you connect with that and just feel and spend some time there, that will start to point you in that direction of your highest values. And that's where we get results. That's where you get personal results. That's where you inspire others. You start to drive your ship very clearly. Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. I mean, and that is exactly why, pro athletes, leaders of companies come to you, because you're able to ground them. You're able to get them in that coherence where they're coming from their heart through their mind, and then having this experience and tapping into their highest potential, whatever it is for them. Pierre, thank you for being here. This has been such a tremendous opportunity. I know we could go for a while, and then
I know.
We've actually we're peaking. We're getting more people are coming on now, and we've been on for almost 90 minutes, and I love it. So for those of you who missed the intro,
that's awesome.
This is Pierre. Pierre, how can they reach out to you if they want to reach out to you? They have more questions. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I mean, obviously, you hook up with me on Facebook, Instagram. Still, I'm a little behind on the Instagram world. You can best way pierredebar@gmail.com. That's my primary source. haptraining.com is another. And they're just reach out to me on those forums. pierredebar@gmail, haptraining.com is another great one. And there you go. You can find me on Facebook, Pierre DeBar.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and thank everyone else for being here. It's been awesome. Yeah. And so we're going to close.
Thank you, Tony. Really great.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're going to close up for tonight. If any of you are available, if you drink your coffee tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern and 7 a.m. Pacific, I got to get the time zones right here. That's 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. Pacific. We'll get it there yet. I will be on doing CEO Secrets with Vinny Rebus. That is our show that we'll be doing tomorrow morning. We're going to be talking about the 13 roles in every business. You're going to want to be there, going to want to see it or watch the replay. Until next time, thanks everyone for being here. Pierre, thank you as well.
You bet.
Deeply
Thanks for
appreciate
listening, everybody. Mm-hmm.